Welcome everyone again to another episode of the ideaXme show that profiles the humans behind the really big ideas that are shaping the world, inspiring future creators. And for all those that love really great stories, I'm Ira Pastor. I'm your health, aging, and longevity ambassador along for this journey. So on the last several shows, we've been spending time at what we refer to as various hierarchical levels of life, disease, and aging processes. We've been talking about the genome and the microbiome, systems biology, and tissue engineering, a lot of wonderful topics. But as exciting and promising as all these research paths are, at the end of the day, in order for them to yield what many of us are looking for, that is radically extended health spans and lifespans, and for them to ultimately be translated at a scale, that is approved by regulators, marketed by large companies, and ultimately prescribed by millions of clinicians, especially as our target market is 7 billion plus people that occupy this planet, there needs to be an appropriate system of advocacy, education, awareness, and networking built around them to really spread the word of the possibilities and sort of the beautiful future that they can bring. So for today's guest, I'm extremely excited that James Strole has chosen to join us on the show and really take us into the future. James is the co-founder and co-director of People Unlimited, which is an organization that's involved in inspiring, educating, and connecting like-minded people interested in achieving unlimited lifespans. James is also the director of the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, which is an organization with a mission to bring about a sea change of how radical life extension is viewed and understood, ultimately in order to generate greater support for a broad range of initiatives from scientific research to social and psychological breakthroughs to intellectual and artistic expression. The organization, the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, is the producer of the annual RadFest, which is known as the Revolution Against Aging and Death, which represents the world's largest gathering of radical life extension enthusiasts. James is also an advisor to the X Prize Future of Longevity Community. James is the co-author of a book, Just Getting Started, 50 Years of Living Forever, and has been a visionary anti-death activist and community builder who has spoken and written on radical life extension and physical immortality for the last 4 decades. He's dedicated his life to challenging death-oriented beliefs and practices and has coached thousands of people interested in living an ageless lifestyle to achieve healthier, fuller, more vibrant lives. He's appeared on numerous TV shows, both domestically and internationally, and has spoken to audiences multiple continents around the world. Jim, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you, Ira. Wow, that was very well spoken, everything you said. I don't think you even have to interview me now. It was so good.
we'll go a little further. We'll go a little further. So for folks that are not in the life extension community, that may not be familiar with RAD, let's take a step back and just really give you the floor for a little while. Just talk about you, your background, where you grew up, ultimately how you got interested in health, how you got interested in aging and radical longevity, and how you basically found yourself on this current path.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you again for having me on your show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. I was, to try to make this as comprehensive as possible or complete, but yet to the point, I got interested in, I'll say ending death at a very young age because I had a painful experience with my grandmother dying. I think a lot of us have had, well, probably everybody's had this experience one level or another. And I was about 11 years old at that time, and I was very close to my grandmother. She was a real inspiration in my life and quite a seeker herself of life. And when she died, it was, like I say, very, very painful. And I asked my mother, I said, wow, I said, she could tell that I was, grieving a lot. And she tried to comfort me. She said, you'll see, grandma in heaven, and I said, wow. I said, well, what do I have? When will that be? He says, well, when you die. Well, that didn't sound very good. So I said, why do we have to have, die to go to heaven? Why can't we have heaven here on earth? And, she said, oh, okay. My mother, she said, that's a good thought. Why don't you pursue that? And so I just had that feeling at a young age that something was wrong with death. Of course, as you know, when we come out of the womb, we have no consciousness of death. We learn it, we see it, basically we all feel at a young age immortal, and we're taught otherwise. Thankfully, I had a mother who was also progressive that way. She took me to every speaker in town that was at a young age, because my two older brothers didn't want to go, and I was interested. So she took me if it was a speaker on, integral yoga, which she introduced me to, or some other new health modality, or something along the lines of, living longer, healthier lives. Longevity was not really spoken of during that time per se,
Sure.
but people were trying, there was a group of people who were trying to live healthier, and she was within that arena. Our refrigerator was filled with all kinds of, fresh juices and from carrot juice to you name it, and all these other different vitamins that were available at that time. That was back in the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
and at late 50s and 60s. And so my friends would come over. They would go to my refrigerator to get something to drink. And they see all this juices and vegetable juices, and I go, "What's this?" So I grew up with that, and I'm grateful for that, because I think it contributed a lot to my health today. So I've always done different, everything I could do. What the science was at that time,
Mm-hmm.
was eating as good as you could, doing things like, cleansings and colonics and all kinds of stuff like that, which I did. So, but anyway, so I got interested there in longevity at a very early age, and knew something was wrong with that. So I pursued that all my life. I always had kind of an ear out for it. I mixed playing sports like I'd like to do and everything else. So in the early 60s, I ran across a teaching that my mother took me to hear a speaker on integral yoga.
Okay.
And integral yoga was all about, the master, or the guru, Sri Aurobindo, and he was like the Abraham Lincoln of India. Okay. Yeah. So he wanted to galvanize, to integrate and bring together all the yogis, and his expression was, let's use our enlightenment for something other than just competing with each other in it, like who has the most enlightenment. Let's use our super consciousness to create a super body that will not die. And wow, that struck me. I thought, that's great. That's the first I actually got engaged in something that was actually talking about the possibility, of creating a super body. So still without any real conception how that come about. I got involved in that several years. It was a great training for me on that level. And then as I moved along in my life, in 1968, I met my partner now, Bernadine Brown, and another associate that was with her at that time, Charles Paul Brown. And they were speaking at that time that immortality was possible, that super longevity was very possible, and that they had a vision of that. And so that drew me. And at the time I just graduated and got an associate bachelor's degree. I was going to college at ASU, and that I thought, wow, this is what I want to do. I want to pursue this more. And this was an opportunity. They invited me to get more engaged. I started going to their events in different parts of up in Colorado, a lot they had events, and they'd come to Arizona and speak and around the country. So I started touring at times when I ever could, join them on tours.
Sure.
And at that time, I wrote everything that I was feeling about life. I could, write pretty well what I felt, and I didn't express much. But then when I started going to these events, they invited me to start speaking at these events.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking in public is probably most people's biggest fear. I can remember my first time I spoke about around 300 people. Bernie and her partner invited me up to speak, and I was so nervous I had to hold on to a piano. My legs were, my pants were shaking. I think that back in the 60s, so I was wearing bell bottoms and they were ringing. But anyway, it was great, and I started then getting into that groove and expressing about life, elaborating everything that we could. Together, we started looking for any science we could find on the subject. There wasn't much out there. In the mid 70s, Joshua Ledenberg, the Nobel Prize winner, geneticist, he was speaking in Scottsdale, but it was a closed meeting. But the next day out in the paper was extraordinary. In 1975, out came this article in the Arizona Republic newspaper that Joshua Ledenberg said immortality is possible. And that was the headline. We go, whoa, that was great. So we tried to track him down, but it was very hard to reach him. Of course, then you didn't have the internet, you didn't have contact numbers and everything else to talk to him more. But that was encouraging that he was saying that, And so that's the first glimpse of somebody in the science arena that was saying this was possible. So anyway, we kept pursuing this, writing about it, and eventually we were traveling all over the world, like you were saying earlier, speaking that immortality and super longevity was possible. 26 different continents, all kinds of TV shows, radio shows, everything else. And then Bernie and I, in 1995, we broke away from the company we were working with at that time because we had some ideological differences, and we wanted to create something, I'll say, more in-depth as far as finding people that really meant business about living unlimited lifespans.
Right.
We wanted to create an organization that would draw in people who were serious about it.
Sure.
And so that's how we created People Unlimited in 1995. Bernie and I formed that. And it was before we worked for a nonprofit organization, just going around speaking on super longevity. So we created in 1995 this profit organization and created a community, which has been quite successful. We're the largest community of its kind, anyway, in the world today, and growing. And we're very, I'll use the word, proud that we've created a community of people that are really dedicated. And we're looking for more people that, I'll use the term, want to become activists for super longevity. So that's what People Unlimited is about.
What, talking a little bit more about that, obviously, that was almost 30 years ago or so. What were some of the challenges about, getting the message out back then? Obviously, it's 2019 now. It's not 1960, but still 1990, and it was a much different time. Were there challenges, surprises along the way that, positive or negative surprises in creating an organization like that in the 90s?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about People Unlimited in the 90s now.
Right.
Okay, as you know, back in the 70s when we first started, speaking, it was very, very extremely challenging because not most people weren't even talking longevity, much less super longevity.
Sure.
So, we had a lot of critics and we were called, crazy, you name it, we were called it. And also we had a lot of positive experiences of people, because most people, when you talk about extended life, say most people, I mean, a great number of people, if they think you can live in some state of, vitality, are into that if it's possible. But, for the most part, it was really across the board, a lot of skepticism back in those days. 95, when we started People Unlimited, it was more was happening. The word was out there more. And so although there was still a lot of skepticism, of course, even like today there was more happening within the community. I mean, Life Extension, Foundation was getting the word out a lot. A lot of other organizations, were working, together. So every once in a while you'd hear a lot more news. I mean, things as now are just in the last few years have really accelerated.
Sure.
And we're all really grateful for that. And the word's getting out more and more. But during the time we started in 95, People Unlimited, still there was, quite a bit of resistance to the idea, but more and more people actually, I'll say, looking for an alternative, to aging and dying. More people interested in getting more knowledge around longevity, because the longevity arena was also a lot more prevalent. So people were definitely into extending life as healthy as they could, but they didn't have any concept that maybe it could be extended, indefinitely. So that's still what we're dealing with. But then in about 5 years ago now, we got the idea that, we were having great events and great time here with People Unlimited, but we thought, wow, there's so much now happening in the, life extension arena, the super longevity arena, that we thought we need to reach out to everybody we can in that arena and begin to move to galvanize the arena in some way. Bernie and I were good at that, bringing people together. We had that experience, and we said, what can we do to do that? So we started meeting with some different people in that arena that we were introduced to, Max Moore, Natasha Moore, David Kekich, Dr. Bill Andrews, Bill Falloon. We got different introductions of different people, and we started talking to them about what we wanted to do. We came up with this idea. of creating a coalition for radical life extension, and along with that, creating an event that would bring everybody together in person, you know, to really create a human connection that would grow and expand and begin to get the word out on a really strong level. You know, and the response we got in that was fantastic from everybody. It was like from Bill Andrews to Bill Falloon to you name it that I made contact with, well, they love that idea of creating a coalition and also creating an event that we could all get together in purpose. They were skeptical because up to that time, about every science event, including the ones that Bill Falloon tried to put together, life extension or SINS moved to put together, weren't drawing very many people, mostly just scientists. Right. And they wanted the public in because the public, you know, is a driving force behind, you know, what everything we want to do on that level to create that tipping point. So you know, but the response to us to do it was fantastic. Everybody jumped in to help. We created a board right away. We created a nonprofit, and we created a board, and we created a steering committee for the coalition. And then we began to introduce this idea of RadFest. And we came up with that name. First of all, we had several of the scientists say, please don't create another event that's just a, you know, boring science event.
Sure.
You know, a lot of, you know, although we go to them and it can be good, we want something different. Right. So we went to the drawing board. We said, hey, why don't we come up with something like a Woodstock, you know, for radical life extension, something festive, fun, so that would also draw in the public, but would draw in the best of science. And so that's what we did. We put that concept together, and you know, a lot of people were skeptical about it at the time, and of course, even today, some are, you know, why do we have dancing and singing at this science event? Well, first of all, I mean, it's a movement. You know, this is not just another science event. RadFest is a movement for all of us to be engaged in. It's a place where all of us can actually come celebrate what we're doing, find out some of the best therapies, modalities that are going on. Here's some of the top experts in their field on super longevity, and you know, just create a movement together that, in my vision, can spread across the world. That actually has an organic movement to itself. Absolutely. And so it's proved out to be successful. The first one in 2016 surprised everybody by having about 1,000 people there. It became the largest event of its kind, and everybody was happy but very surprised too when they walked into the room in San Diego, the big convention room, and it was practically filled up with people. You know, I remember Aubrey de Grey coming up to me and saying, "Jim, I will never doubt this again." He said, "I apologize for not being more on board. I just didn't think you guys would be able to do it, you know? And so now I'm all in," he said. So that was beautiful. You might have read his article recently that he wrote about RadFest. Absolutely. Which was great. Absolutely. And so this was kind of the consensus and across the board. And you know, RadFest is not in competition with any other event. We need all the science events and things we can do. But it's a place everybody then, no matter what event they're in, we embrace every event. We embrace everything that everybody's doing. You know, it's a coalition. It's a place for everybody to come in and be together in person. We got the internet's great, as you know, but we have to sometimes get off the internet, meet in person, be there, energize each other.
Yeah, and you have to have dancing too. I don't want to go anywhere there's no dancing.
Exactly. We need you there, Ira. So yeah, it just you know, now so many of these top scientists and wellness doctors, they call it their favorite event because they can come, you know, let their hair hang down. But also, what's important, sometimes we don't think these scientists, we lose track that they're people. Right. You know, we just think they're doing something in a lab, but they're very passionate people and beautiful people. You know, they're the stars of the show in my mind, and they need inspiration too. They need encouragement. You know, Bill Andrews told me recently, he said, "Wow, if it wasn't for RadFest, I may have quit. You know, I may have stopped because, you know, I was out there by myself, like in a desert, and you know, all you get basically is resistance most of the time. Now I can come," he said, "to people in Limit or RadFest and hear people cheering me." So yeah, they need that. We all need that. It's a physiological thing. There's a lot of science in that in itself, that we need inspiration. So that's what Bernie and I are about, really. We're the inspirational end, you might say, or we move to change the mindset around super longevity. We're not scientists or doctors, as you know. We're activists, But that's the role we play. But everybody, as you know, Ira, like yourself, has a role to play in this movement. And by the way, thank you for everything you do. You do a great job and you're spreading the news, and you're very articulate in it. I've listened to many of your podcasts and so forth, and I really appreciate the work you're doing.
I appreciate that. Keeping on that topic, obviously, you're spreading the awareness, the advocacy. One area that I've heard you speak a lot about is sort of that of integration and cooperation, in the sense that this life science area is extremely exciting, but it is, as most people know, it requires a tremendous amount of money, very long time frames, and unfortunately, there's not infinity dollars sitting somewhere, and so at some level, there's infighting that occasionally occurs. You've said things, and I've heard you talk about, we're not each other's enemies. There's no rooms for cliques in this thing, or, that'll ruin everything. Talk to a little bit about sort of, the process, about how we can, the importance of engendering better integration, cooperation, and not belittling one another in sort of getting this thing done. Because, I'm an old school sort of pharma industry insider, and I watched for way too long. Those people kill, the people that worked on oncology hate the people that worked on cardiology, and vice versa, because they're fighting for that last dollar. Talk a little bit about that, if you will, how we can.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for bringing that up. There's trade secrets that we, people have and organizations have that, we not have to necessarily share those. I mean, there's things that need to be under, wraps because of different, technical things going on or whatever. But sharing information as a whole, coming together and not bickering over things. There's nothing like a healthy debate, but not tearing each other down. First of all, it's a waste of time.
Sure.
Arguing that kind of fighting is a waste of time. The comment I always make is, look, we're not each other's enemies on this planet. We've made each other in this world. Unfortunately, so many of us enemies of each other. We're not the real enemy. The real enemy is sickness, aging, and death. And if we all come together with that common purpose, we're going to have a higher purpose to come together for. A higher purpose, and that's so needed in our world. I mean, you see this all the time. People that have a purpose together, they get focused. They end the biting, the inbiting chemistries, and they begin to work together for that higher purpose.
Sure.
There's no higher purpose. I think there's no more noble cause than ending death on this planet and extending life. I mean, I don't need to go into how horrible it is to lose your loved one, how horrible it is to lose the knowledge, the information, and the loss of everything we need to be able to experience as we mature. But having said all that, sharing information moves things faster. Okay, and that's what we want to do. We have to keep our eye on the prize.
Absolutely.
All right, the prize is getting accomplished what we want to get accomplished and being able to extend life successfully. And so we keep that in mind. Then we don't have to wonder about who's getting the most praise, who's getting the most award. I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about us getting the job done here. That's the biggest reward we can all get.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of joy in that. It brings about a soul movement in your own body and with other people. Then, it's okay to, again, I mean, this is another issue, but you spoke about money, making money, but without that feeling, you're empty, in my mind, you're soulless. And so all the money in the world, what does it matter? You die with it, and it's futile. So, yes. But the simple terms, like I just said, sharing information, powerful information together moves things faster. And we're already seeing this at RadFest. I've had several scientists, doctors tell me, they met this individual or that individual. They didn't know that. They shared information, many times even sharing information on, or I'll say tools in the laboratory. It might be a centrifuge that somebody had that wasn't using it, and this particular lab needed it. It's in having to buy it. So this is also, by sharing information, and we're speaking about cost, it's also going to help cut down costs. For example, there's an individual right now, I just talked to you yesterday. I can't mention his name right now. You might even know, but he's created a app. He's created a software that everybody's going to be, all the science fields are going to be able to go onto. It's going to be like a Craigslist where they can share information on this app. They can share equipment. Okay, so that there's some $150,000 machine somewhere sitting in some lab, you know, that they're not using. They can either maybe buy that at an inexpensive price or trade it or even borrow it sometimes. We want to get that kind of exchange going. Mm-hmm. This will enable a lot of these labs and other, you know, smaller labs to actually work at a less expensive cost. So this is a very powerful application. But this is a matter of sharing and going for the same purpose.
Excellent. One other thing I wanted to touch on, because, you know, you speak, like you and Bernadine, you know, are quite eloquent in regard to what I'll call the psychological or mental aspect of aging. You know, a lot of, you know, in the research community, we talk a lot of sort of the chronological component of aging, and, you know, the amount of time we've been here, or the biologic component of aging, and biomarkers and genes and all this stuff. But there really is this third component that we don't think about as much, about how we think of ourselves, and not just how we think of ourselves, but also how now there's the increasing amount of information in the literature that shows how thoughts, beneficial thoughts, trickle down to all aspects of our bodies, whether it's our organs, our cells, our tissues, and even at the level of DNA. Can you speak a little bit about, you know, how you speak about sort of this aspect of aging in some of your talks? I think it's a very important thing that both you and Bernadine have spoken to in the past. And if you can just talk a little bit on the show about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to speak about this more at RadFest this year, because we feel it is so vital. You know how powerful the mind is. We all know that, okay? We know how, from the placebo effects, you know, that happen. And so it's so vital to take on what we call an ageless mindset. You know, we too much identify with how old we are, and then we play that role, you know. So by getting out of that, I'll call mindset or consciousness, it enables us to begin to not just relate anymore to how old we are, but more about how alive we feel, you know. Because aliveness is a chemistry. And so we need to change our chemistries around aging. And what I love is, look, we all know, okay, we all sense very strongly that in the future, we will have extended indefinite lifespans. Okay, we all know that. Some people say it's, you know, 5 years away, 10 years away for the first 20 years away. But, you know, we all know that future exists. So why not begin to live that way now? Okay, let's draw the future to us. That's the principle of that. Why live in that death consciousness? It's a much better way to live too. All right, to be thinking you're gonna live, you're gonna keep living, you're ageless, than to live in that consciousness of death that's so programmed in our body. So it's a very in-depth thing and very powerful mindset to take on. I'm always reminded. I mean, I love that film, Hidden Figures. I don't know if you saw it.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was extraordinary, and I just enjoy those kind of films where somebody, you know, strives so hard. And of course, we identify with that, and then they make it to the moon, you know. Well, during that, if you remember, during that film, they asked the director of NASA, his team said, do you think we're going to make it? He said, I'm already there. You know? Yeah, and so that's what we're talking about. We have to see ourselves there now. Absolutely. If we don't, we're always in this struggle, and it goes against us in our bodies. You know, I think also that mindset helps our immune systems. I think it strengthens our resolve to get through things that we normally wouldn't get through. Most people just give up too fast, you know, when they have a condition, when there's almost always an answer for it. But by taking that mindset on that I'm already there, bring the future to you, then it drives you in a whole different biological way.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. No, it's an excellent point. And as I said, you speak so eloquently about it, and it's I think a underappreciated aspect of what I refer to as this longevity thing, exactly. That, you know, as we dive too much into genes and proteins and cells, we forget about sort of the higher, what I'll call the higher level architecture surrounding this stuff. And I think it's extremely important that you speak about this and you lead on that particular front.
Thank you.
You know, it's been wonderful having you. Before we get into the wrap up of the show, we typically at the for the last question of the show move away from sort of the central theme and the science and go a little bit into the science fiction. But I have to pose this question to you, and you can take a little time with it. Obviously, throughout your career, the last few decades, you've met a wide range of very important people on many different fronts. I want to pose the question to you, Jim Strole. If I was to offer you a ride on my hypothetical time machine that's sitting over here. And I gave you the opportunity to go meet somebody that you've always wanted to meet. It could be a scientist, an artist, a philosopher, whatever. And I let you go and spend some time and talk to that person. For Jim Strole, who would that be? And what would you want to talk to that person about?
That's a good one. That's a great one. Wow. Well, there's a few. You want me to name one or who?
No,
I have about three or four.
Have a party. Have a little bit together.
Well, Einstein for one. Okay. I mean, there's a thinker, and I think he absolutely, well, he did. He expressed. He saw the future. He saw immortality for all of us. And this is all part of what we're talking about, of not losing, and the gifts that we have in this world. Individuals that have contributed so much. And how would it be today if he was still alive and still moving progressively? We'd probably be a lot more ahead where we are. He'd be a great contributor. So I'd like to have that conversation with him. Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I've always admired him, read about him from a young kid. I was always very moved by his ability to integrate, the people, his passion that was there. Bringing together, the union. I've had that spirit in my own body from a young age, and I was very inspired by him. So I love to have, sit down with him and, maybe smoke his pipe or whatever. I don't know. At least one time. So, and then of course, Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King. It's not the warmongers that is the problem. It's the nice people that know better in this world and don't do anything about it. It's everything that we're dealing with, even our own arena, that we need to have a total wake up among all of us that maybe could be a little bit passive about this situation and realize we can't leave it to the scientists alone, that we all play a role. We all have to be a driving force to get this job done. And so I think Martin Luther King was a driving force in that arena. And also I liked where, there was his moving to end discrimination by saying, it's not the color of your skin that we should be concerned about, but the content of your character.
Absolutely.
And that's why we need to end the prejudice among one another, so we can also, again, get this job done we need to get done. I'm grateful for the contributions all these people made and how they inspired me in my life. And there's several more.
Well, it's been a true pleasure. Once again, for everybody listening and watching the show today, we've been talking to James Strole, co-founder and co-director of People Unlimited, director of the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, and founder of the RadFest, advisor to the X Prize Future of Longevity Community, and co-author of the book Just Getting Started: 50 Years of Living Forever. Inspiring, educating, connecting like-minded people interested in achieving unlimited lifespans. Jim, it's been a true pleasure. Once again, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for everything you're doing and the way you're taking all of this forward throughout these various different phases of your life and career. And really appreciate you spending the time on the show today.
Thank you, Ira, and I hope I see you in Las Vegas, October 3rd through the 6th at RadFest. We need you there. You've got a press pass.
Okay. Thanks so much. It's a true pleasure.
Okay.